In 2016, a French documentary crew traveled deep into the Amazon rainforest to show isolated indigenous tribes footage of modern society. The tribe members didn't recognize the moon landing, they didn't understand the September 11th attacks, but they knew the name Michael Jackson. Yet the man the world recognized was often eclipsed by a cartoonish tabloid caricature. Throughout the 1980s and 90s, headlines favored the nickname Wacko Jacko. The media publicized his behavior as a series of bizarre stunts, printing stories about his pet chimpanzee Bubbles or the rumor that he slept inside a hyperbaric oxygen chamber. The public consumed these stories as entertainment. Millions of people evaluated the behaviors themselves, the masks, the private theme park, the erratic interviews, leaving the underlying causes unexamined. He lived as a global curiosity, isolated from regular human contact. This academic analysis presents a different perspective. These clinical observations suggest the profile of a severely traumatized individual living inside a psychological fishbowl. To understand his life, we have to look past the celebrity spectacle and apply clinical frameworks. Frameworks like body dysmorphic disorder and object relations theory provide the context for his public unraveling. The king of pop remains a mystery only when viewed through the lens of fame. When that lens is removed, the life of Michael Jackson reveals the specific, recurring symptoms of profound, unhealed childhood wounds. Much of the public criticism centered on his skin tone. For years, the narrative held that Jackson intentionally bleached his skin to appear white, viewing it as a rejection of his black heritage. Factual. The official 2009 autopsy report provided objective medical clarity. The coroner confirmed a diagnosis of vitiligo, a condition that destroys the pigment-producing skin cells. Jackson had claimed this as the cause since 1993, though few believed it at the time. While vitiligo explains the loss of pigment, the autopsy also documented extensive surgical alterations around his nose and ears. These physical findings are consistent with body dysmorphic disorder, a condition where a person becomes consumed by perceived flaws in their appearance. The roots of this behavior often trace back to his father. Joe Jackson exhibited a phallic narcissistic character, haughty, cold, and aggressive. Behind his public smile, he maintained a domestic tyranny that left Michael terrified. He frequently mocked Michael's appearance, specifically ridiculing his big nose. This verbal abuse was reinforced by physical violence. Joe conducted rehearsals for the Jackson 5 with a belt in his hand, ready to strike for any missed step or off-key note. Michael later admitted that the mere sight of his father would make him physically nauseous. These constant surgical procedures allowed Jackson to systematically erase his father's features from his own face. His morphing face was a physical manifestation of a boy trying to escape the reflection of his abuser. This need for escape shaped his entire lifestyle. As an adult, Jackson's obsession with toys, animation, and children was widely misunderstood. While the public saw Peter Pan syndrome as an eccentricity, clinical analysts saw it as a symptom of a deeper fracture. Jackson began performing professionally at age 5. By the time he was 8, he was the lead singer of the Jackson 5 and a primary breadwinner for a family of 11. He assumed the weight of adult responsibility before he had the chance to develop emotionally as a child. Object relations theory suggests that without a sense of psychological security during formative years, emotional growth can stall. The mind remains stuck at the developmental stage where the trauma first occurred. Neverland Ranch was the physical manifestation of this arrested development. It was a fortress, a 2,700-acre estate where he could finally experience the childhood stages his father had denied him. This created a fractured personality. On stage, he was a commanding, meticulous perfectionist, but in his private life, he was described by examining psychologists as a regressed 10-year-old. Neverland operated as a barricade, a psychological fortress constructed to protect a lost boy who never learned how to function in the adult world. Because Jackson struggled to relate to adults, he sought the company of children, viewing these connections as innocent. To a public that didn't understand his trauma, this behavior appeared predatory. The 1993 allegations triggered a wave of global media coverage that heavily favored a narrative of guilt. Jackson defended sharing his bed as an expression of his childlike personality. failing to grasp how adults perceive these boundaries. Psychologists found that Jackson didn't fit the typical profile of a predator. While predators often use toys to lure victims, Jackson genuinely played with the toys himself. He was emotionally connected to children because, psychologically, he was one of them. The trials took a severe toll. He became increasingly reclusive, his finances fell into disarray, and he grew heavily dependent on prescription drugs to manage chronic sleep problems and the weight of his trauma. Although he was never convicted of a crime, the allegations permanently changed his public image. He shifted from a beloved superstar to a figure shadowed by scandal. Michael Jackson's life demonstrates that fame and wealth cannot heal childhood wounds. Instead, they provide the resources to broadcast those wounds to the entire world. Jackson remains misunderstood because society judged the symptoms of his pain rather than the cause. We criticized the bizarre lifestyle, while failing to recognize the unhealed trauma of the boy behind the mask. His music and his messages of healing the world were his own forms of self-therapy, broadcast to millions. His story is a global reminder of the cycle of abuse, a damaged boy who became a god, only to be destroyed by the very childhood he could never escape.